All right. Hello, logic class. So I'm sorry I couldn't be there with you today. I've got some appointments to keep on this Monday. So I hope you guys will enjoy this lecture. Lord willing, after I hit stop on this recording and send it in for the substitute to play for you, I'm going to grade your homework. So hopefully right now you've got your homework that you turned in on Friday. If you weren't here on Friday, then go ahead and turn your homework in and you can look at your book while we're going over this. It's on page 246. But if you've got your graded homework back in front of you, I'd like for you to have it out. We're going to go over this. I can't be there to answer your questions, obviously, but I want to give you a chance to see what you got right or what you got wrong, and then we'll move on and cover some new material today. So we are looking at additional exercises for lesson 27. We're starting on number 4. So just a couple of reminders as we jump in. Remember that every single categorical statement has 2 immediate inferences. They all have an obverse, and A's and O's have contrapositives, and E's and I's have converses. So every single one of these, number 4 through 11, the first one we'll do is an obverse. You didn't have to do it in that order, but that's just how the book organized it, and that's probably how I'll organize it most of the time, just due to the fact that they all have an obverse. So with that being said, let me just say a word of prayer for us, actually. So Heavenly Father, thank you for today. Thank you for the gift of technology, and thank you for the gift of these students. I love them, and we love you. Amen. All right, so let's look at number 4. All exothermic reactions are energy releasers. So that is obviously an A statement. Therefore, like I said, they all have an obverse. So the obverse would be no exothermic reactions are non-energy releasers. So remember, in an obverse, we switch the quality, in this case from affirmative to negative, and we negate the predicate. Since this is an A, the other immediate inference is going to be a contrapositive. So remember, in a contrapositive, even though the name sounds funky, it's fairly straightforward. You're just going to switch the position of the subject and the predicate, and you're going to negate them both. So contrapositive would now be all non-energy releasers are non-exothermic reactions. So number 5, no large democracy is an effective government. So our obverse is going to be all large democracies are non-effective governments. So again, we have changed the quality, this time from negative to affirmative, and we have negated the predicate. Fairly straightforward. Even more straightforward, a converse. No effective government is a large democracy. Remember, in a converse, all we do, we don't negate anything. We don't change the quality. We just switch the subject and the predicate. Number 6, some pagan myths are profitable reading. The obverse here is going to be some pagan myths are not non-profitable reading, which again, I know is awkwardly worded, and in real life, we would just cancel out the not non and leave us with not with are profitable reading. But for this case, just leave it awkwardly worded. So the converse would be some profitable readings are pagan myths. So hopefully you guys are getting the hang of this. We'll be doing a lot of these, so don't just eject them from your brain after today. Number 7, some friendly neighbors are not Christian. So that is an O statement. So we're going to be able to do an obverse and a contrapositive. The obverse, some friendly neighbors are non-Christian. So we have switched the quality from negative to affirmative. So that's where the not went. And we negated the president. So that's where the president, we didn't negate the president. We negated the predicate. And that's where the non comes from. So some friendly neighbors are non-Christians. The contrapositive, some non-Christians are not non-friendly neighbors. So again, awkwardly worded. In real life, we'd cancel out the not non, but we're not going to worry about that today. So number 8, all impossible events are improbable events. That is an A statement. So we'll be able to do an obverse. No impossible events are probable events. And we're going to be able to do a contrapositive. All probable events are possible events. Now, there are some things that we might have some wiggle room here. You might have wiggle room if you put the predicate nominative in a different order, but there's not a lot of wiggle room when it comes to you have to switch the quality, you have to negate the predicate, or you got to switch the subject and the predicate. There's not a lot of ways to get that right, or just really one way to get that right. So moving on, sorry, I still sound terrible. Hopefully by Tuesday when you guys see me, I won't sound like this anymore. But on Friday, I do. So number 9, no penguins are non-swimmers. Okay, so the obverse would be all penguins are swimmers. And in this case, life's funny. They did, in this case, cancel out the not non. So the obverse would obviously be all penguins are not non-swimmers. In this case, they did cancel out, but if you didn't, I'm not going to count that wrong, so don't worry. The converse would be no non-swimmers are penguins. Number 10, some exercises are unhealthy activities. So our obverse is going to be some exercises are not healthy activities. And our converse is going to be some unhealthy activities are exercises. Number 11, some defendants are not non-responsive witnesses. That was hard to say already. So the obverse would be some defendants are responsive witnesses. So we have switched the quality. So that's where the not went. And then we negated I don't know why I keep saying that. We negated the predicate, giving us non-unresponsive. And so again, in this case, they canceled each other out. If you did not, don't worry, I'm not going to count that wrong because I was really stressing to leave it in the awkward form just so you guys get used to it. The contrapositive would be some responsive witnesses are not non-defendants. Okay, so that was 4 through 11, very similar to the stuff we did together in class. Hopefully that went well for you guys. Now we're going to look at 12 through 15. Now I will tell you on 12 through 15, there are multiple ways to do this right. I had one 7th grade friend came to see me after school on Friday, and I walked him through how to do number 12, and I did it right. I ended up with 3 terms in the categorical statement. We evaluated it. We said, oh, that's invalid. Then I checked the book, and they translated it a different way, and they ended up with a valid argument. So what I'm going to be looking for when I check this is, do you have 3 terms, right? That you can't make up your own conclusion. So starting from the conclusion that they give you in the argument, do you have 3 terms? Are they all in categorical form? And did you evaluate them by the rules? And if you did that, even if your answer is different from the book, which is what I'm going to put up here on the screen, don't worry, I'm not going to count you as being wrong. So without further ado, let's take a look at numbers 12 through 15. So number 12, I'm going to just put up the final form. I'm not going to walk through the original. The final form would be this. All fantasy is interesting stuff. All fantasy is fiction. Therefore, some fiction is interesting stuff. And that would be a valid argument. So I know David Bean out there is keeping track of every single valid argument. This would be an AAI3. So every AAI3 is valid. Okay. So again, you could have done this differently. If you took the conclusion, much fiction is interesting stuff, and you changed that into a different categorical statement than some fiction is interesting stuff, then that would have taken you on a whole different path. And again, that's fine. You can have more than one right answer. So for number 13, here's the final answer. And I have no idea what an OLET is. So your guess is as good as mine. All OLETs are obstructionists. All obstructionists are non-progressive wardens. Therefore, all non-progressive wardens are OLETs. Now, this is invalid. Let's see if we can figure out why. Is the middle term distributed? Yes. Obstructionist is distributed in the minor premise. We have a illicit minor. Okay, so our minor term is distributed in the conclusion, but not in the minor premise. Therefore, we have an illicit minor. Therefore, it's invalid. Now, the instructions just say, is it valid? You don't have to tell which rule it broke. If you just wrote valid or invalid, that's good enough for me. Number 14, final form. Shout out to my man, Malachi Sullivan, who has used T-Rexes and complicated dinosaur terms for every counterexample. So Malachi must have really loved this one. Number 14, some non-mammals were non-apatosaurs. All dinosaurs were non-mammals. Therefore, some dinosaurs were non-apatosaurs. Malachi, you'll have to tell me when I get back whether or not these statements are true. Let's see if we can figure out why they are invalid. The middle term is non-mammals, and it's not distributed in either premise. So we could go farther, but all we have to say is invalid. The middle term is not distributed. All right, number 15. Here we go. No snipers are pacifists. Some good sleepers are snipers. Therefore, some good sleepers are not pacifists. And this one is valid. Our middle term is snipers. It's distributed. We do have a distributed term in the conclusion, pacifist. It's distributed. We don't have 2 negative premises. We don't have an affirmative premise, so rule number 4 doesn't apply. We do have a negative conclusion, and I don't have 2 affirmative premises. Therefore, valid. Okay, so again, that probably felt a little weird and awkward, and there's no problem if it wasn't your finest hour, because we're going to get plenty of practice. But we'll just kind of grade and we'll just learn from there. So what I want to do today, now that we've kind of gone over that, is I want us to learn how to translate some more ordinary statements into categorical form. So go ahead and take out a piece of notebook paper, and we are going to talk about translating ordinary statements. So I want you to have a piece of notebook paper out. Again, I have highlighted on the screen the things that I want you to write down. There won't be a ton of writing today. So if you choose to write down additional things, that's your choice. But I'm going to be moving at the speed of which I assume you're only writing down what I've told you to. So be warned as far as that's concerned. So let's take a look at translating ordinary statements. So most arguments that you're going to encounter in real life, again, people don't walk up and speak to you in categorical form. Most of these need to be translated into more formal, precise language so that we can put them into categorical syllogisms, we can analyze them and determine their validity before going on to check for soundness. So, for example, all slugs look gross. Okay, now this one you probably know how to do. You're looking at it like, all right, well, I've got a subject. I've got an adjective in the predicate instead of a predicate nominative, and I don't have a helping verb, but I know what to do here. All slugs are gross looking things. So you guys probably all were able to do that. I hope so. But one of the tricks that you'll have to learn is we know that every categorical statement has to start with all, no, or some, and which one goes with which. And so we're going to learn that there are certain types of statements, certain types of words where we automatically see them and we'll automatically think, oh, that has to be an all statement, or that has to be a no, or that's a particular negative, or that's a particular affirmative. So that's what we're going to be learning today. So how about this? Every man dies. And a very simple way that you can ask yourself this question is, what's the subject? Okay, man. We're talking about man. And here's my question. How much man are we talking about? What's the extension of man? Well, given by the fact that the first word is every, we're making a universal claim, okay? So this is a universal statement. So what that's going to look like, well, what do you think? What would it be? Every man dies. Give me a second to think about that. All man or all men are, we could say, people that die, or all men are dyers, right? But that's in categorical form. Now we've got our all, no, or some, we've got our subject, we've got our helping verb, and we've got our predicate nominative. So all men are dyers. Any student can translate this. Now again, what's the subject? Student. How many students are we talking about? Again, we're talking about all students. This statement, though it says any, is talking about the entire extension of the word student. So any student can translate this would be something like, all students are people who are able to translate this, or students who are able to translate this, something like that. So, right? So we've got our all, no, or some, we've got our subject, we've got our helping verb, and then we've got our predicate nominative. And so we put it in that form, and that's how we do this. Okay, so let's move on and let's see some of these other statements we'll need to learn how to translate. So I'll put this up here, and again, if you, I think this is in your book, and so you don't have to write this down today. This would not be a terrible thing to have kind of written down somewhere to be able to refer back to when you're doing your homework. But here are some synonyms that if you see, it should ring the alarm bell for this is going to be a universal affirmative. So if you see every, any, or as many as, then just think automatically, boom, that is going to be a universal affirmative. So same deal with no. Here are some synonyms that can replace no. If you see none, or all blank not, or never, any of those should make you think, okay, well, that is a universal. We're talking about the entire statement, the entire extension. That's a universal negative. And then again, with some, many, most, a few, and several. Now the trick with some is you have to ask yourself, is this a some, an I statement, or is this a some are not, an O statement? And what's going to clue you in there is this making an affirmative claim or a negative claim? Now, it's easy with the all and the no, right? None or never, that's very obviously, that's a negative. Every, any, as many as, that's very much an affirmative claim. But with some, you're going to have to do a little more work to figure out, is this a particular affirmative or is this a particular negative? But we will practice and you will get the hang of it. So how about this statement? Not all SRP. Okay, not all SRP. So is that making is that making a universal or a particular claim? Well, it's not making a universal claim, right? It's saying, in fact, not all SRP. So we know it's not a universal affirmative, but it's also not saying no SRP. So it is not making a universal negative. Okay, so it's not no SSP. It's obviously not all SRP. If you look at it, you can really think that not all SRP is actually the contradiction of an A statement. Okay, so think about it this way. We talked about negating things last week. And now if you added the word non in front of the predicate, you negated it, right? Fruit to non-fruit. So in a lot of ways, what we're doing with not all SRP is we are just negating an all SRP statement. And so not all SRP is the contradiction of an A. If you'll think back to your square of opposition, what kind of statement contradicts an A statement? That's right, an O statement. So if we were to translate the statement, any statement that says, not all students are good students, well, we would translate that into an O statement. So it would be some students are not good students. It wouldn't be some students are good students, because while that may be true, that's not what this claim is saying, because this is making a negative particular claim. And so it would have to be a some S R not P, right? So if you see not all SRP, which is a fairly common thing that you might see, then understand that it is not a universal negative. It's also not a particular affirmative. That is a particular negative. All right, my apologies for the little blip there. I had to hit pause and go get some water. I still sound like a frog, but at least I don't feel quite like a frog. All right, so where were we? We're talking about the statement not all SRP, and we're saying that is the contradiction of an A, therefore that's an O statement. So not all SRP will be translated as some S are not P. All right, so how about this statement? So we'll kind of do this rapid fire. I'm not going to take a long, awkward pause here, but each one. But I'm going to give you like 5 or 6 seconds to see if you can figure out, okay? So everybody needs a friend. Again, who are we talking about and how many of them are we talking about? And we make an affirmative or negative claim. We're talking about everybody. That's an affirmative claim. So we would say all people are friend needers, okay? Again, hopefully we're starting to think, shout out to Ava Gray, these are things we can actually use, because people might say to us, everybody needs a friend, right? Those are sentences we've probably said. And now we know how to translate them into standard form. How about this one? Any number 2 pencil will work. Okay, what are we talking about? Number 2 pencils. How much of that group are we talking about? Talking about all of them. So how about this? All number 2 pencils are working pencils, or are pencils that will work, right? As many as saw the accident may testify. Now, we've probably never said that sentence before, but we would know that all witnesses of the accident are people who may testify. How about this one? None of the songs I heard were copyrighted, or none of the songs I downloaded were copyrighted. No songs I heard were copyrighted songs. All of the pianos in that room are not in tune. No pianos in that room are tuned pianos. Now, remember, it's not enough to ask the question, how many of the subject are we talking about? The second question has to be, are we making an affirmative or a negative claim? Because this one's tricky, because look, we see the word all, and so we want to say, oh, we should make that an A statement. That's a universal affirmative. But the claim is actually a negative claim. They are not something. And since we can't say all S are not P, we say no S are P. So no pianos in that room are tuned pianos. A few more. toddlers never study calculus. I mean, give me a break. I have 2 toddlers at home, and I can tell you that is 100% true. I've never seen them study calculus, not even once. No toddlers are calculus students. Many soldiers visited the memorial. Are we talking about all soldiers? Nope, just some of them. And are we making an affirmative or a negative claim? Affirmative. So we would say some soldiers were memorial visitors. Most people like ice cream. Again, that's a particular claim, and it's an affirmative claim. So some people are ice cream likers. The other people are crazy because ice cream's amazing. Next, a few people like spinach. Now, here are these weirdos. This is probably the people who don't like ice cream. They're the people who do like spinach. That's probably what I suspect. So some people are spinach likers. Not all soldiers fight on the front line. Again, we've already seen this. Not all. We know that is an O statement. So some soldiers are not front lines fighters. Okay. So again, this is probably, we've never done this before. And so this is always going to feel a little weird, a little awkward. Hopefully we're getting the hang of it. So let's look at some other, just very quickly, some additional ordinary English statements that need some special translation. So Ursula is a poet. What do you guys think? All right, what's the subject? Ursula. How many Ursulas are we talking about? Well, we're only talking about one, but of that group of one, how many of them are poets? All of them. 1 out of 1. So though it's going to sound really weird, singular statements are translated as universals. So we would say all Ursula is a poet. Now again, please don't turn this in on a paper to Mr. Lightheart and say Mr. Wood said to do this. What we're doing is we're taking ordinary statements and putting them into categorical form. And so Ursula is a poet. Again, I'm going to walk you through that sort of chain of thought here. The subject is Ursula. And we're only talking about one Ursula. But of those one Ursulas, how many Ursulas are poets? 1 out of 1. That's a universal claim. So we would say all Ursula is a poet. If it was Ursula is not a poet, we would say no Ursula is a poet. So again, we're doing the same thing with singular statements that are denials. You are not going. And you've probably been told that by your parents after a progress report or a report card. Please, can I go to the party? Everyone's going. Well, I don't care if everyone's going. You are not going. Well, how would that be in a categorical statement? Which, side note, I would not recommend that you respond to your parents, with that kind of categorical statement. Then you're going to get grounded even longer. So please don't do that. You are not going. No, you are a person going. Or no, you are a going person. Okay? Again, that is such a weird sentence, but that's categorical form. That's how we can put it into a syllogism and we can analyze it. Right? Again, I'm not even going to tell you how to do that in a syllogism because I don't want to give you ammunition if you're arguing with your parents, and then I don't want my name brought up. So I'm just going to go ahead and move on. All right, how about this? Indefinite statements. Okay, so an indefinite statement, it looks similar to singular statements, but you've got to translate them a little more carefully. So boys threw rocks at me, which is probably true, and it's always mean, but boys are rock throwers. So boys threw rocks at me. Now, it looks like that is a universal affirmative, right? It is the case that these boys threw rocks. It looks like she's talking about all the boys. But if I said all boys threw rocks at me, then I am saying that every boy on the planet threw a rock at me. And if that was true, you would probably be dead. So what we're going to have to do with this one is to say some boys were throwers of rocks at me. Because the truth of the matter is, unless you are saying every boy on the planet threw rocks at me, you can't say all boys. You've got to say some boys were throwers of rocks at me. And for the record, even if it was one boy, that is too many boys. Boys do not throw rocks. Well, boys do throw rocks. What I'm saying is boys, comma, do not, that's an imperative, do not throw rocks. Okay? So indefinite statements, you've got to be careful. They're almost always going to end up being a particular statement. Okay, but we'll show you one exception here at the end. So sometimes indefinite statements can be universal. So for example, cats are mammals. Now we don't see all cats. We don't see any cat or every cat, but we know that that's actually a universal statement. So cats are mammals. In this sentence, that would be a universal. So we would say all cats are mammals. But in the very next sentence, the same word, cats saying outside my window. How many cats we talking about? We talking about every cat on the planet? I don't think so. They wouldn't be able to fit around your window. So we're going to have to say with that one, ooh, yep, see, here's the error. Here's what we did. So the first statement is a universal, okay? The first statement is a universal. The second statement is a particular. The third, it needs to be particular as well, right? Because, so we might say, all cats are mammals, some cats saying outside my window, therefore, some mammals saying outside my window. Now, that's not even categorical form, obviously, because we don't have the form of the helping verb and the minor premise and the conclusion, but you get what I'm going at. The very same word in two different statements, one of them could be used as a universal, and the other one can be used as a particular. It's just going to depend on how it gets used. So the final statement that we'll address today is an if-then, or what we might call a hypothetical, right? Like, if you get an A on the test, then you'll get ice cream. If you eat that piece of cake, you will be thrown from the house. I had some high drama over some cake. In my family, we were very protective over our sweets and our goodies, so I understand this kind of thinking of being willing to throw a child from your house because they ate a piece of cake. But that needs to be translated as universal as well. So from now on, just for now, we'll learn some nuance later. For now, translate all hypothetical statements as universals. So how would that sound? Okay, well, we're talking about you and eating cake and being thrown from the house. So what we would say, all eaters of that piece of cake. Okay, if you eat that piece of cake, you'll be thrown from the house. All eaters. It's almost like there's a sign, like you know how like trespassers will be shot, right? All people who are trespassers are people who will be shot. Well, they didn't want to write all those words, so they shortened it to trespassers will be shot. So all eaters of that piece of cake are people who will be thrown from the house. So again, that is awkwardly worded and kind of a bummer, but for now, translate all hypothetical statements as universals. And it's an affirmative statement, right? It's a scary statement, but it's saying for all people who eat that piece of cake, it is the case that they will be thrown from the house. So it's universal, all people who eat that piece of cake. And it's affirmative, will be thrown from the house. It is the case that you will be thrown from the house. So for now, translate hypotheticals as universals. The judgment call will come, is that a universal affirmative or is that a universal negative? One more. Negative hypotheticals need to be translated as universals as well. So if you eat that piece of cake, you will not regret it. Okay? And I'm going to just show you this because this is kind of weird. I'll just tell you as a little hint. Hypotheticals can often be translated in terms of time. So we might say something like this. No times you eat that cake are times you will regret. Now, times is not up here in the original sentence, but it's the same meaning. So we can add this word to give us a little bit of help. No times you eat that cake are times you will regret. So what I want you to do is I want you to open up your book to page 209, okay? Open up your book to page 209. I've got about 15 minutes left. I'm going to walk you through a couple of your homework assignments, or your homework assignment. All right, so we're going to do 1 through 5 together pretty quickly. And I want you to write these down in your book, page 209. I'm going to give you the answers for 1 through 5. And then you'll do 6 through 10 on a separate piece of paper that the substitute will give you, and that'll be part of your homework tonight. But we're going to do 1 through 5 together. So, God is good. The subject is God, and it's a particular statement, but we're going to translate that as a universal. So we would say all God is a good being. Okay? We can't just say good because we can't end with an adjective. Number 2, as many as are led by the Spirit of God, these are sons of God. Okay, as many as. Remember, that's a ding, 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 ding. We're thinking about universals, and that's a universal affirmative. So we might say something like this: all people led by the Spirit of God are sons of God. Okay. This time it went from a little wordy and kind of awkwardly and wooden to something we're a little more familiar with. Number 3, if you sin, then you are a lawbreaker. Okay, so remember that's a hypothetical. So we're going to translate it as a universal. Is it making a negative or an affirmative claim? Well, it's certainly a bad thing to be a lawbreaker, but it's making an affirmative claim because it's saying if you sin, it is the case, right? Affirming something. It is the case that you are a lawbreaker. Therefore, all sinners are lawbreakers. Okay, number 4, not everybody will come. Okay, so we have here, remember this is, think about it like this. It's not saying nobody's coming. It's not saying everybody's coming. And we can't say some people will come because it's making a negative claim. So that needs to be an O statement. So some people are not people who will come. Okay. Number 5, a soft answer turns away wrath. How many soft answers according to that verse? All of them. This needs to be all soft answers are wrath deflectors. All soft answers are wrath deflectors. Now, hopefully, you've got those written down and they'll help you, and your notes will help you. Like I keep telling you, use your catechism, use your notes, use your book when you're doing homework. So, we just did 1 through 5. And so, on your homework, the very last page, I've stapled exercise 28 for you, and you'll do 6 through 10 as part of your homework. Also, as part of your homework, go ahead and turn in your book. Then turn in your book to page 247. Okay, page 247. Get you some more practice with this. And I'm going to do the first, I'm going to be very nice to you and do the first 2 for you. Okay, so if you're looking at page 247, additional exercises for lesson 28, it says translate the following statements into standard categorical form. So just what we did, we're going to do that again. So Paris is beautiful in the springtime. So how many Parises? Well, there's only one, but out of the one Parises, how many of them are beautiful in the springtime? All of them. So it's universal. Are we making an affirmative or a negative claim? Affirmative. So we're going to say all Paris in the springtime is a beautiful city. So again, I want you to write that on page 247 just so you have something to look at, how to do this. Number 2, Scotty is not a miracle worker. Okay? How many Scotties we talking about? 1. But of those Scotties, how many aren't miracle workers? 1, right? So this is a universal claim, and am I making an affirmative or a negative? Well, he's not a miracle worker, so this would be a negative claim. So we would say, no Scotty is a miracle worker. Okay, so no Scotty is a miracle worker. So for your homework tonight, you're going to do on a separate piece of paper that the sub will give you in just a minute. You're going to do numbers 3, 4, 5, and 6. You don't have to write the answers to 1 and 2 on your paper that you're turning in. Just write it in your book so you have something to look at. You're also going to do on page 248, again, this will be printed and handed to you, but I'm going to do number 7 for you. I'm going to do number 7 for you, and then that'll leave you with 8, 9, and 10 to do tonight. So let's take a look at number 7. Number 7. So it says, translate the following arguments into standard categorical syllogisms and determine their validity. Now, they were nice to you, and they went ahead and put it, well, they didn't put it in standard order. So you'll need to put it in standard order. But you can see, so Sammy is not a calculus student. That's obviously going to be our conclusion. So you would change each one of these into standard form. Make sure you end up with only 3 terms. And then it says determine their validity. So remember, all you have to do is say whether it's valid or not. You don't have to say which rule it breaks. If it breaks rule number 1, you don't have to check any more rules. So just tell me if it's valid or not. So for number 7, here is what it looked like in final form. No toddlers are calculus students. So toddlers never study calculus. We did that one together during this lecture. He is still a toddler. We're talking about Sammy, so we need to put in his name. all Sammy is a toddler. Therefore, no Sammy is a calculus student. And that is, let's see, do we have is our middle term distributed? Yes. Do we have any distributed terms at the conclusion? Two of them. Are they distributed? Yes and yes. Do we have two negative premises? No. Do we have an affirmative conclusion? No. Do we have a negative conclusion? Yes. Do we have two affirmative premises? No. Valid. Okay, so you'll do that for 8, 9, and 10. So your homework tonight, you're going to do 3 through 6, 8 through 10, and then you're going to finish 6 through 10 on exercise 28. So please use your catechism. Please use your notes. Please use your book. This lecture is posted on YouTube. You can find it. You can rewatch parts of it. And this will be due before class begins on Tuesday. And hopefully I will see you guys then. Love y'all and see you then.